Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 208. Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. If you're brand new, hello, my name is Tess. I am the host of this show, founder of Wander Wealthy, and your business coach. If you are a money coach, financial coach, wealth coach, money mindset coach, any kind of coach who deals with money, then you are in the right place. This week's episode is one I can't believe I haven't created before. It's something that we dive into in the very first phase of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint because it is so important to touch on. And if you don't know, the Wealthy Coach Blueprint is my 12-week business coaching program specifically for coaches who deal with money. And we walk through the steps that you need to take to make sure that you are fully built on a strong business foundation, that your program is life-changing for the ideal clients that you are positioned to serve and to support, and to really build a program and an offering and a marketing plan that feels easy, that works within your lifestyle, and that allows you to sell more, make more money, and make a bigger impact. So we are currently in an active round of the blueprint. The next round will open up in a couple of months. And if you want to be the first to know and get early access to some of the materials that we have for you, then you can head to wanderwealthy.com/apply to jump on the waitlist, and I will be in touch fairly shortly to see what the next steps are for us to build your booked out, life-changing, game-changing money coaching business, or coaching business that touches on money. But like I said, the topic that we're talking about today is the do's and don'ts of financial coaching. Essentially, what can you talk about? What can you teach on? What can you give advice around when it comes to money coaching, financial coaching, wealth coaching, coaching in general, and kind of drawing the line between that and being a financial planner, financial advisor, investment manager, anyone who is actually actively kind of moving your money around or telling you specifically what to purchase, what to do with your money in that regard, like purchasing certain things. And we're going to get into it because that helps us understand the difference. Now, the line here, just as a quick preemptive mention, the line is a little bit gray because there is no hard and fast kind of rule about what a coach can and cannot discuss. What I think is important is the coach needs to understand that, you don't want to be liable for someone's financial mistakes or even their financial wins, right? Like that is up to the client. It's the client's decision what they ultimately do with their money at the end of the day. And so you just want to keep in mind that giving explicit and direct advice isn't always the best place for the coach to come from in the first place. Because as a coach, you are trying to inspire and motivate behavioral change that will change the end result for the client. Whereas an advisor and a manager, a planner, they're a little bit more literally hands on the money. So they can kind of determine and give direct, explicit advice around like what the client should or should not do and actually help them execute that. So that's kind of like the first, 1,000-foot view difference. But like I said, there's a little bit of a gray line. I'm going to mention the do's and don'ts, the differences. And also we're going to kickstart with just like, what is the coach's job in the first place? And then we'll get into the differences, and I will make sure that in the show notes of this week's episode, you have a nice little table to help you decipher, where you stand as a coach, what you should, what you can, what you definitely, I invite you to talk about, to address with your clients, and where you might be getting in a little bit of hot water, so to speak. And at the end of the day, it's not necessarily the case where someone is going to directly come after you, but you just want to protect yourself, Knowing what you should and should not talk about is going to be like insurance against any sort of liability in the future. So that is that. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, shall we? So first I want to start off with the role of the coach. Like, what does a money coach, a financial coach, I mean, any kind of coach technically, I think you could use this for, but obviously in this case, we're talking about coaches who deal with money. What do they do? Like, what is your purpose with your clients? So I have kind of a bulleted list that I like to offer to the Wealthy Coach Blueprint crew. And the first one is to assess the situation, right? Your job is to sit down with your client and understand like what's happening, what's been going on, where are we at, where are we starting from? Let's just assess the current situation. Okay, so you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at the situation, you're understanding the behaviors that maybe have gotten them there. And that comes into the next step, which is asking powerful questions. By the way, if you don't have like a notebook and you're not taking notes, get a notebook, get a pen, you can hit pause, come back to this, because this is all going to really help you craft your coaching approach with your clients. But it's also going to help you understand like, where's the go line? Where am I in the green? Where am I good? And where do I want to maybe avoid? So the coach's purpose is to first assess the situation, just like take inventory, take an audit, see where you're at, and then ask powerful questions. And these powerful questions oftentimes help determine like, for what purpose, for what reason are we here today? Like, what has been getting in the way? What's going on in your life that has put us in this current situation? What do we like about that? What do we don't like about that? What else? Tell me more. And just like really getting into it and seeking to understand where your client is coming from. The next step, these aren't even step by step, but the next piece is the coach's job is to help determine your client's goals. Now, that's not necessarily to determine your client's goals for them, but to help your client determine their goals. Like, what is important? What is top priority? What do they want to achieve in the next year, in the next month, in the next 3 years, in the next 10 years? Really bringing that into the light, because if we don't know where we're going, how do we know what step we should take right now, here today, right? So taking your clients through a process, maybe you have your own, maybe you want help with that. We can help you inside the Wealthy Coach Blueprint. But taking your clients through a process to determine, what are their goals, what's important to them. And that way, you know where you're going. Another key thing that the coach's job is to raise awareness. So what I think is probably the most impactful thing that a coach can do for their clients is just to help the client become more aware about their finances, about the ins and outs of their money, like literally what is coming in and what is going out, to help the client build that top of mind awareness about their money and how they feel about it, how they think about it. What is their relationship with it? The next piece for the coach, the next job of the coach, is to identify gaps. So this can be gaps in terms of behavioral gaps, like when you go through and ask those powerful questions and you start to witness and pay attention to your clients. Like, this is going to probably happen over the course of weeks or months. The coach is going to start to identify, where is the client getting stuck, or what is the client missing in order to get to the goal that they want to achieve. But the coach can also identify gaps simply by providing this like third-party point of view on their finances. So on the first day, you might be able to look at their bank account statement, their credit card statement, and say, hey, did you realize that you're spending this thing on this thing? Do you even care about that? Do you even use that? What's going on? Tell me a little bit about it. And that might be a gap in their budget where they're, seeing money, get flushed down the toilet because they're not actually using whatever that thing is. And the coach can, again, bring awareness to it. But first they identify the gaps and then they bring awareness. The next job of the coach is to help remove indecision. This is another one that I think is like so valuable to have a coach, because a lot of people get stuck and a lot of people don't end up achieving their goals simply because they just don't know what step to take, or simply because they are stuck between options and they're feeling a little bit paralyzed. Analysis paralysis is real. So they feel a little bit paralyzed about what to do first, what to do next, and which decision is going to be the best decision for them. Now, your job as the coach isn't necessarily to say, make this decision, but it's to help bring the options to the surface and to have a conversation with the client to think through like which option is going to be the best, and then setting a due date to make that decision so the client can, for lack of a better phrase, like shit or get off the pot, right? So the client can take the decision, move forward, and then readjust from there. It's kind of the idea of like, even if the decision is the wrong decision, at least they're failing forward instead of just not moving at all. The next job is the coach is meant to offer direction and guidance. So similar to removing that indecision, you're going to provide those options and offer some direction, right? So like, okay, here are the options. Here is what we have available to us. Now we're going to, you help them make the decision, and then you help them stay on the right path. So you help them keep in perspective, what is the goal? Why are we doing this? Because let's be real, changing financial habits and behavior is difficult, and you really need help. Anyone needs help to stay on track and to be reminded, like, why are we doing this in the first place? Because there's going to be days where it's not going to be fun anymore, where you're going to lose that motivation, because motivation isn't just something that we all intrinsically have. We have to create it for ourselves a lot of the times. So the job of the coach is to offer the direction to keep the client on the path that they chose, and to provide that guidance, okay, these are what the next steps are now that we've chosen this path. The job of the coach, the next one, is to acknowledge positive behavior. So this is something, I kind of mentioned this in last week's podcast when I did my little rant, just about how there is a coaching practice where you can pull at the client's shame and guilt and use that to motivate them. And it's just not one that I see as the most positive or productive way to coach individuals, because there are people who will have long-term negative trauma with that kind of approach. And going more the positive route is definitely one that doesn't have a lot of long-term negative effects, even if there are short-term positive effects. So acknowledging positive behavior is something that is so important. And the reason is getting better with your finances is a long-term process. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Just like, working on building a business. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So great, awesome things aren't going to happen overnight. You're not going to pay your debt off overnight. You're not going to get a raise overnight. You're not going to save your $100,000 overnight, right? It takes time, and it takes a change in behavior to get there. And the reason why I believe a lot of people can end up giving up is because they start looking too far ahead and then get discouraged about their progress, because again, it's a long-term game. And if you look too far ahead and think like, well, how the heck am I supposed to get there? You start to, one of my mentors used to say, pole vault over mouse turds, right? You start to decide that like these little things aren't worth it to do because you're not going to save that six figures, by next month. It's going to take a while. And so what a coach can do is help keep the perspective, but also acknowledge the positive change that your clients are making, even the smallest things, and help them celebrate those small wins, because let's be real, $100,000 in savings is a lot of little $10 savings here and there, or a lot of $100 savings, or even $1,000 savings, right? It's a lot of little wins, a lot of little positive behavioral changes stacked on top of each other. It's micro actions that lead to our macro results. So a coach's job is to acknowledge that positive behavior to help the client stay motivated, to stay inspired, to continue to stay on the path that they've chosen, to continue to work to their goals. And even when they have that long-term view and then might get discouraged because it feels so far off, the coach's job is to help them see these are the awesome things that you've been able to do. Let's keep going with it because it's getting you closer to your end goal. Because at the end of the day, like, changing is hard. And that's, a lot of the major reasons why we hire a coach. The next job of the coach is to provide feedback. So the coach obviously is doing all of these things, assessing the situation, asking questions, determining the goals, helping provide guidance, acknowledging the behavioral change. And over the long term, the coach is also identifying, those gaps and bringing awareness to it. And really the coach's job is to also provide constructive feedback, right? What does need to be brought to light so that we can shine that light on it and decide, are we willing and ready to change this, especially if it is maybe a negative or self-sabotaging behavior, and really opening up the conversation about whatever, thing might be going on. This is where, if we are going to touch on guilt and shame in our coaching, we're going to open it up from a place of empathy and have a discussion about it, and then help our clients determine, like, do we want to change this? Is it important for us to change it? Is whatever behavior it is that we're engaging in, or however this is coming up in our life, is this something that we see is negatively impacting the financial results that we're trying to get? And if so, again, going back to, do we want to change it? Can we change it? What are our resources? What can we do to change it? And then monitoring that progress throughout, the weeks or the months to see if the client is able to positively reverse or 180 whatever that situation or whatever it might be that is impacting their finances or even the greater livelihood that they are living. The final job of the coach is to collapse time. This is another super, super value add that the coach offers, because a lot of times if you have a conversation with someone, and maybe it's a sales conversation, and you identify their goals, you understand what their struggles are, you understand what's getting in the way so that they're not able to reach their goals, or they haven't been able to reach their goals, then you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, this is how I can help you reach your goals, and you give them the price point, and they're like, I'm just going to try to do it myself. A lot of times what I'll ask is, okay, well, what have you been doing so far? How have you been doing it yourself so far? And what's going to change? And if you do this on your own, like, how long is it going to take for you to continue to stay motivated, to make that positive change, to have your own perspective and your own awareness around what's going on, what's getting in the way, where are the gaps, and so on and so forth. And obviously with a coach, you have that person who is holding you accountable to make a decision by a certain time frame, to take action by a certain time frame, to bring awareness to gaps that maybe you can't see, to offer direction so that you don't have to make all the mistakes that maybe you've been making or you could make by doing it on your own, right? There's so many reasons why when you hire someone, they're going to be able to help you get the results that you want to achieve in far less time than it would take for you to do it yourself. And largely and usually it's because the coach has done it before, right? They've gone through whatever it is that you want to go through. They may have achieved what you want to achieve, or they're further along in their path, so they've made the mistakes, or they've taken the time, they've maybe taken the long route, or maybe they were also lucky enough to find a coach who could help them collapse their own timeline, and now they want to pass that on. Whatever it is, the coach probably holds some value that's going to allow the client to achieve their goals in far less time. And at the end of the day, we know that in the money space especially, time equals money, right? If you can save up sooner to be able to make that investment in whatever it is, whether it's actually like in the stock market, or it's to buy the house, or it's to hire a business coach, or whatever that is, if a coach could help you do that, you're increasing your wealth, right? If you buy the house sooner, you can pay it off sooner so that you can do something else sooner, or you can decrease the cost of living sooner because maybe you're going to be paying less in the mortgage and all of that, then the rent, I don't know, whatever that looks like for you. If you invest in a business coach sooner, you'll be able to get your business up and running and be making some money sooner that you can then take and invest sooner or save sooner, which then opens up more doors sooner. You get the picture, right? Like there's a ripple effect that happens. And when we can collapse time, we can turn the time that we would have had, continued to spend on reaching our goals. We get to take that time and turn it into money. And that is powerful. So this is the job of the coach. So now if we take this and we identify the difference between a coach and a financial advisor, planner, manager, it can also help us to see how our job can be complementary to a financial planner, advisor, and manager, and also understand the differences. So in short, the main focus of a money coach, financial coach, wealth coach, even money mindset coach, but obviously this is going to be tweaked if you're fully only focusing on mindset. But the main focus is to address the fundamental financial needs of your clients, to help your clients set, work towards, and achieve their day-to-day and short-term financial goals, and to be really focused on the behaviors and habits of your clients. Now, the coach can choose whether they're going to be super comprehensive in their coaching and really focus on all different facets of the individual's personal finances, or specialize in one specific area. Maybe it is like student loan debt forgiveness, or maybe it is purchasing a home or something like that. This is the focus of the coach. Now, on the other end, there is the planner, advisor, and manager, and their focus is typically on longer term goals. They're going to have a little bit more of a focus on the products that potentially their clients are going to purchase, like insurance products, investment products, and assets, right? And a planner, advisor, manager, they can also be a comprehensive planner and look at the full financial picture, or again, they can specialize in one area or another. Now, I want to make sure that I add that some planners, advisors, and managers do also have some coaching services. They provide a little bit more day-to-day, short-term behavioral coaching along with their planning and advising. And that is, that's definitely beneficial to them to really help their clients make sure that they're managing the day-to-day finances, as well as their, maybe they have lots and lots of money in savings for various reasons. But not every planner, advisor, manager offers this, and largely because the way that typically planners, advisors, and managers make money is either through selling specific assets and products, or through like an annual assets under management fee. And so obviously the more assets their clients have, the more money the planner makes. Now there are some that have other types of fee structures where they just charge for the financial plan. And then they charge kind of like a monthly or an annual fee. And it's kind of like a subscription type of thing. And that's a little bit more in line with the coach. And in that case, the planner, advisor, manager might be taking more of a coach's role. So there is some overlap, and that's cool too. But there are plenty of planners, advisors, and managers who don't want to do the day-to-day kind of money management, budgeting, and a little bit more hands-on behavioral change support that a coach does offer. And that's where there can be some really good strategic partnerships there and available for you to refer each other, and just, always have kind of like a good inflow of clientele. So moving on to the approach of the coach is obviously to be more hands-on, to provide support and accountability whenever the client needs it. And the coach really takes a done with you process where the coach doesn't have their hands in the client's finances, right? They can't move anything or have any control about what the client buys and, how much they're spending, obviously. It has to be a done with you process so that the client comes to the table and agrees to do the work, take the action. The coach just helps with the guidance and ensuring that they are making a decision by a certain time point, taking the action they need to, and so on and so forth. The approach of a planner, advisor, manager is typically a little bit more hands-off. They might do check-ins periodically with the client. Maybe it's like quarterly or even only annually. It's a little bit more transactional, right? This is what you expect from me. As long as you do your thing, send the money over this way, we'll get it invested, we will take care of it. And it's a little bit more of a done for you process. Obviously, there are certain regulations and designations that a planner, advisor, manager needs to have in order to be able to have that more it's not necessarily hands-on. It's hands-off, but done for you. So they just kind of like take ownership, and to be able to say, this is what you should buy, this is what you should not buy, these are the best decisions for your situation. Do you want me to execute it? And then the client says yes, and then you go forward. Next is the topics and the resources that the coach covers versus the planner, advisor, and manager. So the coach typically covers things like budgeting, debt reduction, credit, could be bankruptcy, goals-based savings, large purchases like a home and a car, making extra income, negotiating a salary, and also, of course, money mindset and the many different aspects that money mindset covers. So again, a lot of these are kind of day-to-day, shorter-term savings. Obviously, some are long-term, but they're a little bit more, these things are going to be impacted by the day-to-day behavior. And through understanding the behavior of the client, the coach can help them get the results that they're looking for in any of these categories. The planner, advisor, manager is a lot more focused on sometimes cash and debt management, although this is usually fairly minimal. They will touch on insurance products, investment products, retirement planning, and estate planning. And you can see that all of these, kind of going back to the focus, all of these are a lot more long-term goal focused. And so they're just as important as those short-term goals, but they're sort of two separate things. And again, I always need to mention this again and again. A planner, advisor, and manager can cover some of the things that a coach does. It's just not always in their best interest. It's not always going to be like the money-making thing. And we can't fault them for that, because it's also valuable for them to focus on those long-term things, on those, more complex topics, and for the coach to focus on more of the, not necessarily less complex topics, but more of the behavioral day-to-day, just like topics that are also just as important, but are very different from those longer term planning topics. Lastly, the coach and the planner, advisor, manager, another thing that they'll typically do is education. Now, what a coach can do, or what they will typically touch on in terms of the education, can be all of the topics that that I mentioned with budgeting, debt reduction, credit, especially credit. I think that can be really hard to wrap your mind around. Goals, large purchases like buying a home, what is a mortgage, all that good stuff, purchasing a car, extra income, negotiating. The education can be there, but any of the more, quote unquote, complex topics, the coach can also provide education in. So those might be employer benefits, insurance, investments, retirement, educating behind that. Like, why do we have this? What is the importance of this? What do these terms mean? What's the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA? All of that good stuff. The planner, when it comes to education, typically is going to be really high level. Whereas I think what a coach can provide is really bringing the education down to the level of where the client is at and helping them understand it in like layman's terms. Typically, planners, advisors, and managers, they have that unconscious competence where they're so competent in the area, and this is like it's literally their job. They talk about this all the time. It can be hard to remember, especially depending on the breadth of their clientele. Some clients are going to pick up on those more complex terms and totally understand what they're getting into, whereas others might not, but the planner may not have the educational materials to give an offer to the clients. Now, again, that's not necessarily always the case. Some do a great job at educating. Some have resources and materials that are okay, depending on who it is given to. So this is very much painting with a broad brush, but I think it helps us see where the differences lie. Now, moving on to the do's and don'ts. The do's of a money coach are the following. Do help your clients set goals and identify their top priority and maybe sub-priorities. Do calculate your client's net worth. Do develop a budget. Do work on spending behavior. Do make a spending, saving, debt reduction plan, whatever kind of plan that needs to be made there. Do offer mortgage loan analysis, helping the client compare and contrast between maybe some different options that they have been provided and helping them see, okay, what does this mean for your day-to-day budget? What is the difference here? Do talk about salary negotiation. Do offer coaching to help the client make some extra income. So learn is there side hustle coaching, or are we looking at moonlighting? What else can we do to bring in some extra income that'll help us reach our financial goals? And do is you can definitely work on money mindset if that is something that you want to cover and feel capable of tackling. In terms of the don'ts, don't give investment advice. Don't suggest, specific ETFs to invest in. Don't suggest specific individual stocks to invest in. Sometimes you don't even want to say you should invest in through a Roth IRA versus an IRA, because at the end of the day, that's the client's decision to make. What you can do is say, this is what it looks like if you invest in a Roth IRA. This is what it looks like if you invest in an IRA. These are your options. What decision feels like the best for you, right? And helping them understand what is the better option for them. You can definitely educate what is the difference between the two. What are the tax implications? What do we know? What do we not know about taxes in the future? And why might that impact their decision today? You can absolutely provide that education, absolutely showcase those options, just like what I was saying with a mortgage or any other type of loan. If they have options, present the options to them, show them, what are the pros and cons of each. But at the end of the day, they have to make the decision of what is the best choice for them to go forward. And then once they make the decision, you can start developing scenarios or a plan from there. So don't give investment advice. Don't suggest stocks or funds to buy. Don't give tax advice. We are not, unless you are a certified tax preparer, then that's probably not our jurisdiction to talk about. Don't suggest which insurance products to buy. Again, here are the options. These are the pros and cons of this option. These are the pros and cons of this option. They have to be fairly objective, but you can, again, display the options, show them how it'll impact their financial situation. I think what's really awesome about a coach is they can kind of run the different scenarios to help the client make the best decision for them. But again, at the end of the day, it's the client's decision to make. Don't do retirement planning. So you can certainly, again, educate, you can provide analysis, you can provide scenarios in the sense of retirement. You can say, based off of assumptions, this is where you're at, this is where you could potentially be. But at the end of the day, the decisions of which retirement plans they're going to set up, how much they're going to invest, what they're going to invest in, when they're going to retire, how much they're going to pull out, that's going to be the client's decision. And if they need someone to give them that explicit advice, you would refer to a financial planner who is specialized and does specifically work on retirement planning. Don't give estate planning, aka legal advice, any legal advice across the board, but estate planning is one that typically plays a role with financial planners, advisors, managers, and could potentially, depending on who your clientele is, could potentially come up in financial coaching. So again, education. Why is estate planning important? What do you need to know about this? Do you want to set it up? Then we refer or defer to someone who is an expert in that field. And finally, don't make promises to heal, diagnose, or treat. This is typically stuff that's reserved for therapy, psychology, or obviously doctors and so on and so forth. But this is something that a lot of people, especially who work in more so the mindset field, can get into hot water if they are making promises to heal, diagnose, or treat. Even just like money relationships. That is a place where you want to just be careful. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, so I can't say like this is legally allowed or not. But this is just some things that I've heard that could be potentially getting you in the red zone, if you will. All right. So I want to wrap up with some do's and don'ts on some of the more like complex topics, because I think we could use some clarity around like what can and should I maybe stay away from talking about with investing, retirement, tax, insurance, and legal. And then we will wrap up this episode. So if this episode is like really in the weeds for you, I think it'll be really good for you to come back to, make lots of notes, check out the show notes, because at the end of the day, it's just so helpful to have a resource to go to be like, okay, maybe I won't say that specifically, but I can provide the education or whatever it is that you're, looking for in terms of resources. The other thing I wanted to mention is this is my kind of from my experience, this is my research and understanding of the rules, so to speak. Again, there are no hard and fast rules about what a coach can and maybe shouldn't say, because the industry doesn't have set regulations around that. But understanding what a advisor, planner, and manager, what they do, and understanding like what you do need to be designated for to address, and what you what is regulated. And obviously, like if you're talking about that, but you're not necessarily in the regulated industry, then maybe it's not something to be talked about in that way. That's kind of where I am going with this. That's what I've gathered from my own research, my own experience, and even talking to others. So as we wrap this up, I'm going to go through the do's and don'ts of investing, retirement, tax, insurance, and legal. So investing, you definitely can educate about what investing is, what stocks are, what bonds are, what ETFs are, or mutual funds are, providing investment education, because that is so severely lacking, and helping the client understand, like, how does this apply to my life, right? You can help the client learn how to find and understand fees, what options are available to them, right? Like, what are these different accounts? What does this mean? But obviously on the don't side is make suggestions for asset allocation, recommend individual stocks, bonds, ETFs, funds to purchase, make predictions or guarantees on what will happen with your client's investments or the markets. You always want to fall back on, if we make this assumption, this is what it could look like. So if you're trying to, provide examples of like the very common example, I think, in the financial space is, what happens if Vicky invests for 5 years starting from age 25 and then stops investing at age 30, and her friend Molly starts investing at age 30 and invests, the same amount for the rest of her life. And oh, look, assuming they are both at age 65, and assuming that they had an 8% annual return, and maybe assuming something else, like how much are they specifically investing? These are what the differences would be. So you can definitely do that, but you just want to make sure you mention those assumptions so the client knows that, or your students or even your readers know that, okay, these are like hypothetical situations. This isn't saying if you do this, this is what's going to result for you. Retirement is a second one. So definitely educate about various retirement accounts, educate about the employer benefits that are available to your client, provide retirement analysis, right? Comparing and contrasting, or providing scenarios of like what the end results would be. Remembering though to also mention those assumptions, because a lot of times when you're providing analysis or scenarios, you are making assumptions to get to, whatever the answer is. So you always want to provide all of the information to the client. And then ultimately it's their decision to make. Don't create a retirement plan, suggest methods or accounts over others, like, oh, you should absolutely do a Roth IRA over a traditional IRA. Don't suggest investment funds for them to then put the money into inside of their retirement accounts, or give investment advice. Okay, moving on to tax. So do educate around how tax works. I think this is another topic that we don't have enough education around, and it's so unfortunate. So educate around how tax works, especially if, we're talking about investing and retirement, how tax works with various tax advantaged investment vehicles, or even just like investing in general or retirement in general. How tax works with self-employment income, with bonuses, with selling things for a gain or for a loss. And then do refer to a tax professional, which then you can suggest to discuss with tax professionals before taking any action. So you might say, okay, these are the scenarios, these are the options, these are the tax impacts that, could potentially happen. This is what that means. But before you make any decision, I would definitely recommend talking to a tax professional before you take your decision. And then it's like encouraging the client to have that conversation. In terms of the don't say which account is better for them for tax purposes, because we don't know and we aren't qualified to touch on that. Don't give a specific amount to set aside for taxes. Don't suggest to do anything tricky to quote unquote save on taxes. Moving on to insurance, you can absolutely educate about various insurance products, what they protect, what they're or why they're important. You can offer analysis, again, comparing and contrasting different options that are available to them, and just help them understand how that might impact their personal situation for the better, for the worse, or, pros and cons, so that they can make the best decision, knowing and having access to the knowledge that a lot of times people don't have access to when they're making these decisions. In terms of don't make any specific recommendations around insurance products. So like, oh, you should absolutely get this term life insurance policy for 30 years at $1 million. Like, that's up to an insurance agent or an insurance professional to help the client come to a decision about. But again, you can have them talk to an insurance professional, have the professional give some options, or maybe encourage your client to talk to a handful of insurance professionals, bring the options back, and then you as the coach can help them look at the two side by side and see, what the results are, what the impact could be, so that I think so often we go to one person and then we just assume, okay, let's just take it because I'm overwhelmed and I won't even know which one is better for me. But when you can bring it to the coach can kind of like put it into layman's terms. The coach can show you how each will impact your situation and explain the two. And then that makes, making the decision as the client so much easier. Lastly is legal. So pretty much I just say do refer to an attorney regarding estate planning, divorce, business partnerships, literally anything else where it could potentially be legal advice. I don't even have educate around legal because I don't want to get a degree or even learn about legal stuff. I just want to refer out and say, hey, you got me on your team. I'm a really good teammate, but if you need legal advice, I'm not the right person for you. Let's talk to someone who can help you with that. So don't give legal advice. So that's it. I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot to take in. We will make sure to put very good notes in the show notes so you can reference those at wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 208. And if you're interested in joining us in the next round of the blueprint, I highly, highly encourage you to jump on the waitlist. Waitlist always gets first preference, first access, and usually a special bonus opportunity when they are signing up for the Wealthy Coach Blueprint. So head to wanderwealthy.com/apply to jump on the waitlist for the next round of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint so you can build your life-changing coaching program perfectly suited for your ideal client so you can make more money and make a bigger impact in 90 days or less. And if you're ready and riling up to get some things started in your business, I definitely suggest to check out, first and foremost, the pricing formula, which is an amazing little mini course that I've put together. It's my pricing workbook completely revamped so that you have a calculator accessible to you and some really awesome trainings to help you take on the proper pricing mindset to help you understand some opportunities for you to price for more inclusivity in your client base and your business, and so much more. And you can get that for only $27 by going to wanderwealthy.com/pricing. Plus, there's some really special bonus offers available to you that you can't get anywhere else at a very special price point if you go through wanderwealthy.com/pricing to jump inside of the pricing formula. So you'll want to check that out. All right. That was a marathon. I hope that this was super helpful for you. If you have more questions, hit me up on Instagram. I'm at Tess_Wicks. I love chatting with you and always happy to address questions, answer any concerns or curiosities. So send me a message there. And until next time, I hope you wander wealthy.